When a business product or service is delivered to the client or the customer in a way that the client says, this is exactly what I need, and this is making my life better. Thank you, provider of product or service. It's the change in emotion. That's the parallel right there.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer. Today, we have a special two-part series with Jeff Bartsch, who helps accounting advisors attract and retain their ideal clients. In part one, he'll discuss his approach to messaging and how you can stand out above the competition. All right, let's get to that conversation now. Our guest is the founder of Story Greenlight, a coaching company that helps accounting executives and advisors set themselves apart in their industry through communication and thought leadership. Jeff Bartsch, welcome to the show.
Awesome, Michael. Glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. And I absolutely love your topic and the things that you go to work every day trying to solve and help others solve for themselves. I love it. I was saying to you before we got onto the actual recording, this conversation, we could do this every day and it wouldn't be enough, talking about how to set people apart from the crowd and help them be valued by the ones they do end up working with. So let's get into this. And to start, tell us a little bit about you and your career journey leading up to doing what you're doing today.
Sure. Well, if people look up Jeff Bartsch on the internet, they were probably going to see that I spent 20 years making TV in Hollywood, which is true. So straight off the bat, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a bookkeeper. Growing up, I was all about music and movies. And I thought that they were all completely separate. But it turns out, after spending a very long time in Hollywood, everyone seems to think that it's about TV and movies. It's about something much bigger than that. And that thing that Hollywood is about is the thing that we can actually plug into our messaging that we put into the world in our businesses right now. And the time that I really first started to learn this was when I was a kid. I was, for the first 25 years of my life, I was known as Jeff the Piano Guy. And I was playing by ear and playing classically. And my dad was a pastor most of my life, so most of my reps came on Sunday morning playing church music on Sunday mornings. And there was one time when I was thinking I was doing incredibly well. Everyone was saying, Jeff, you're such a great piano player, because I could play Bach or Mozart. And everyone says, ooh, you're amazing. And a church musician took me aside one day when I was in elementary school, and she said, Jeff, it's all well and good to play the notes on the page, but when you get older, you have to learn how to play from your soul. And I was 10 or 11 years old at this point, and I thought that had to be the stupidest thing I'd ever heard in my life, because everyone was saying I was doing great, So I ignored this lady for years until I actually figured out through my lessons and my teaching that sitting under professors, I learned how to take the fundamentals of what I was doing and make them disappear so I could actually bring the music to life. And when I started doing that, people started responding differently. They said, instead of saying, Jeff, you're such an amazing piano player, they said, Jeff, that was the exact song that I needed to hear today. And every once in a while, someone would even say, Jeff, the way you showed up today brought me into an encounter with God. And so when that started happening, first of all, I eventually realized that the lady was totally right. And I need to get out of my own way, because there's something much bigger than me and my ego going on here. Because what I was learning was how to take the notes off the page and take an ordinary message and make it extraordinary. And that's what I've been doing for the rest of my life ever since. I did it with video production in high school. That turned into 20 years of making TV in Hollywood. I started learning about coaching with professional consultants and business experts, how to take their messages and how to elevate them so they can grow their businesses and attract their ideal customers. And that's how I ended up focusing into the accounting world, because there is so much value to be brought in the accounting and the bookkeeping industry that so much people don't know about.
Amen to that. I think this is such an interesting story. I'm at risk of going off into more of your history and asking a lot of questions about it. It's remarkable. When you said the connection back to Hollywood and what we're doing now, to share a bit more about that, about how you get, because I would say that in our industry, yes, bookkeepers, accountants, they're playing the song and they're doing it from the technical aspects, like you were as a young person, really hitting the notes, and technically it would have been a perfect song. But
all
yet
the records are reconciled. The books are closed every month. We're right inside we're right inside the box of everything where everything needs to be. But there's something bigger.
There's bigger, and that tune to the accountants and the bookkeeper is a great tune, and it's like, we're playing this great, but to the audience, they almost like turn that music off, right? Because it's not moving me at all, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the analogy is fantastic, because yes, we hear that all the time, where you could go into a consultation with a prospective client, and you're talking about the technical notes, right? And they're just like probably glazing over.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear how some of this started to click with this audience when you brought the work that you were doing to this audience. How did you discover it?
Sure. So the thing that a large part of my time in Hollywood was not glamorous at all. In fact, most of it was not glamorous. It was me sitting in a room with a very powerful computer hooked up to a very powerful server by myself and playing Legos. As a kid, I played Legos for hours and hours and hours by myself. And, for my career in Hollywood, I was playing Legos instead of building blocks, it was with picture and sound and music and graphics and ideas and emotions and that kind of stuff. When you start thinking about that and you start noodling on it long enough, you realize, okay, Hollywood seems to be about movies and TV. It is not about movies and TV. Those are merely the vehicles. The real impact of what Hollywood does is to change the emotional state of its audience with its message. That is the core of what Hollywood does. And that is the same thing that happens when a business product or service is delivered to the client or the customer in a way that the client says, this is exactly what I need, and this is making my life better. Thank you, provider of product or service. It's the change in emotion. That's the parallel right there. So we think that it's about getting the books accurate and closing the books every month or whatever. That is absolutely part of it. But that's only the vehicle to really delivering the value of what the client actually wants. So that's why I'd start with the parallel. But the bigger picture, if you want to dig into this, is the idea of what everyone wants. And that is tied to the idea of what a story is. And I always got to be careful when the instant you say the word story, people say, "Oh, well, you're just talking about over the water cooler about what happened this weekend." And that's what I refer to as a tactical story. Boots on the ground, delivering an anecdote. The stuff that really moves the needle on any tactical story that you've heard well and you actually feel something or you change the way you think, the power of that comes from a much bigger picture strategic story view. So the place that I always start with my clients is talking about what a story is. And this is based on some of the earlier fiction writings of Donald Miller, who built the business Building a Story Brand. Mm-hmm. He wrote an idea that I expanded to be this. A story is where a character wants something, overcomes obstacles to get it, and experiences transformation as a result. Identity, desire, obstacles, and transformation. And then we, as providers of services and products, we are the guide who comes alongside to help that hero get what they want. So when you understand that strategic picture of what story is, it literally provides a framework to talk about any human interaction that happens between anyone ever. And certainly within business, because when we can understand who our client is, what they want, what's keeping them from getting it, how we can help them get it, that is when we can make all the notes on the page disappear. We can make the bank recs and all the book closings disappear and actually get them to the point where they're getting what they want. They want peace of mind. They want the knowledge of what's, they want the knowledge of what's actually happening in their books and any number of other kind of things. I could geek about this for hours and hours, so I'll just stop there.
It's right on the money with what people want and the message. And I think we definitely have studied Donald Miller, big fan of Story Brand and all of that work. And I think the thing I've come back to mostly is that there's a technical aspect of telling a story or writing a story or creating a story. And then there's the people who are really good at it and the art form of the storytelling. And I get a sense that that's your superpower is, we can know how to write a story and we can have all the bits and bobs and the Lego bits, but putting it together in a Lego piece that people go, I get it, right? And it moves people and it changes their state and their emotion. That's a craft. So how do you help people? Because this is so important, right? What Donald Miller created he simplified. He did a very good job of simplifying the construct of a story in the marketing sense. He did a great job. Joseph Campbell wrote the book on it, and it was pages. Like, if you went and read that book, you wouldn't get it.
Right.
You wouldn't understand it.
It's complicated.
It's complicated, right? So Donald Miller did a great job of distilling that down to something that people could sink their teeth into, but still there's experts in that field like yourself that can help people tell that story and utilize that story in their business. And I'm sure our listeners thinking, it's like, can't someone just do this for me? Can't someone because they really don't want to be the great writers of story. They don't want to be and nor should they maybe, because it's not been their life. They've been figuring out how to do the clarity on the finances and really understanding business finances and making sure it all comes together. So when you're working with a bookkeeper or an accountant, you kind of help them understand, which you've done a great job already helping us understand the mechanics of it. But how do you get them to utilize something like this?
Yeah. And that is 100%. That's 100% the question, because when you realize the big picture of what is actually happening, when you understand that you're operating with the building blocks of identity and desire and obstacles and change, I mean, those are core drivers of human existence right alongside gravity. And as the danger with all that is, it's so big picture, it's so high flying. It's saying, okay, well, how do you actually use this stuff? And so the first thing to keep in mind is that people think that storytelling has to be this amazing, complicated thing. And it does if you want to keep people's attention for a long span of time. Thankfully, in business, everything gets to be short form, which means we get many fewer moving parts in the story. And the other great thing to know is you can understand these ideas and you can put them into play without ever telling a tactical story yourself. Because when you actually dig into this idea of the character who wants something, overcomes obstacles to get it, and experiences transformation as a result, when you take that idea and you apply it to yourself, you apply it to your business, you apply it to your client, that is when you start thinking, okay, what's this? What are the layers of identity and desire and obstacles, and how do they all stack up on top of each other? And that's when you can start asking things like, okay, well, really the most important thing in a business and service, as a service and provider, you say, okay, well, who is the client and what do they want and what's getting in their way? Those are the core questions to start asking. And that is the fundamentals of using the big picture of storytelling to start asking questions to actually get inside the heart and mind of the client. That's where it begins.
And that just in itself, if someone did that with every prospective and existing client, would be an improvement.
Well, and here's the big thing. I mean, we're talking a little bit about the accounting industry and bookkeeping industry in general. There are a lot of things changing. And there are some people who might have their business set up and say, okay, you know what, I'm good. I've got my book of business. I'm at the scale that I want. There are other people saying, well, there are a lot of things changing and I don't know what to do. So there is the idea of the accounting industry in general has been looking backward, giving historical reports and saying, here's what has just happened. Here's what happened last month, last quarter, last year, or whatever. And really, what does the client actually want? So many times the client says, I'm supposed to have all the answers, but I'm getting to the point where I don't have all the answers. And frankly, I don't want to admit that I don't have the answers, but I'm not going to tell anyone. But so that's one of the big unspoken things that so many business owners have. And so one of the big directions that the accounting industry is moving towards is to say, instead of just doing compliance work to button up the past, they say, how do we look towards the future? And you say, well, what do you want moving forward, Mr. Ms. Businessman? And so I'd be curious to know, how do you see your community engaging with that idea?
I think it's great. I mean, they will engage with that idea. And I was just actually, as you were talking, thinking about it, in the idea of the experience that any of our listener would have running a business is there's lots of change. There's lots of change on the business owner side of things, right? And that I think it was the comment that you made kind of spun me off into my own thoughts, which is dangerous in a conversation, was this idea of, because you nailed something there, the idea of that the business owner, the unspoken thing that's happening there is that most, like when people are in business, and I'm kind of speaking for myself here too a little bit, like as a business owner, wait a second, you're supposed to know the numbers really well. You're supposed to be great at finances. Like that's kind of this, like if you ask someone who has never thought of having a business or got into business or even cares, and you said, well, what do you think about a business? When a business person's talking about like their numbers and their finances, yeah, they'd be an expert at that. Like you would find that people, if they owned a business and there were people that wanted financial advice, they'd ask a business owner.
Absolutely.
And the reality is
therefore you're an expert.
Yeah, that's right. So the reality is that most of them are not. Farthest thing from it. They are experts at some other technical, I was an engineer and then I started an engineering firm. I was an electrician and I started an electrician business, right? And so but they come with that same concept of I'm supposed to really know this stuff. So first of all, there's shame about not knowing it. There's money issue, there's money emotional money stuff that every human brings. And if they're a small business, then they're connected to the money. And so there's all these things going on. And if people don't want to talk about it, if a bookkeeper isn't actually bringing that elephant out in the room, there's a disconnect in communication right away.
100%. And here's the thing. As a friend of mine says, what's ordinary to you is amazing to others. And the things that accountants and bookkeepers know, the nuts and bolts of how the numbers work, that is an incredibly valuable knowledge that most business owners simply do not have. They just don't know. And the thing is, if you present a P&L, if you present a balance sheet or a cash flow statement and you say, here are the numbers, they speak for themselves. No, they don't. Some people can, some business owners can, they can look at the P&L and they can see what's there, but so many times they don't know what to do about it. So, and if the financial service provider expects the numbers to speak for themselves, well, that's where communication breaks down, as you say.
It does, and really part of what it's like it's like, what do they want? It's like, oh, well, let's make you better at finance, understanding finances. It's like, that's not it. That's not what they want. They just want it all to work so that they get what they want, which is a business that makes money, a business that can grow or scale or give them the lifestyle that they want. That's what they want. But if we're not talking about, it's like, let's call a spade a spade. You're not great at finances and I am, and we're going to make you, we're going to give you everything you need so your business can thrive, that it's efficient, that it can, that would be a refreshing conversation for most business owners, because you're like, oh, really? Thank you. Now, some of them might not even, they might not think that's even possible based on their own experience, right? Because not all of the people that they've worked with in the past would actually be any better at it. That's one of the other problems. We've got technicians. Not all technicians in accounting and bookkeeping are built the same, right? Because it's not it's not like someone we can say, it's very clear, someone's either good or not good at it, right? So like something more that we do I'm trying to make myself clear here. Something that we do every day where we know that's very good, and if we don't know what's great, then we don't even know what we're looking for. And so most of our listeners right now would be coming up against a preconceived notion of what someone's capable of or what the benefits, like their battle exists with changing the story that person already has about what it looks like to work with an accountant or a bookkeeper.
Oh, but it gets worse, because you have the entire industry being known for, we stand in a corner and we don't speak unless we're spoken to. By the way, you're not allowed to speak unless you're spoken to. I mean, how many people have that kind of idea around the accounting, the accounting vibe, and just the industry, just historically, because you have generations of people delivering reports to business owners who don't understand them and don't have anyone to interpret what they mean. And so they say, thank you very much. Keep doing what you're doing. I can sleep at night knowing that I'm within the confines of whatever compliance boxes I need to be in. And I'm just going to go cry myself to sleep because I don't know how to run my business.
Yeah. I love it. The colors on the graph are great.
Yeah.
I really love the bindings. Those bindings are fantastic. I love that. That is such an interesting concept that I don't think I've ever kind of heard it, or it's never been discussed on the podcast. But that is, I've seen it. I've been in the corporate world. It's like the finance people, they give you the numbers and it's like, thank you. And we're going to do it the same way we've been doing it every other day. because we don't understand what all that means. Anyways, so it's like so interesting of a barrier, really, and such a great opportunity to be able to break this barrier.
Yeah. So one of the challenges that arises from that then is you have people who they know the ins and outs of the financials, and then they say, well, but I don't know the nuts and bolts of what makes the business tick, unless you do. I mean, if you do happen to be a bookkeeping operation and you work specifically with trucking and logistics organizations, and you happen to know that every time that truck comes back empty, deadheads home, and they're empty with not carrying a load, that's money that you're not making on that run back. Whereas if you can schedule your logistics back and forth, that truck is full both ways, that's more money, that's more revenue coming in. That kind of nuts and bolts, industry specific key performance indicator, that's the kind of stuff that if you can know that stuff, if you can dig into those kind of things, then attach them to the financials and say, okay, here's where the variances are happening month over month or quarter over quarter in these reports. Tell me, Mr. Ms. Business Owner, what's been happening with these specific upstream KPIs? That's the kind of stuff when you can start digging into things and start attaching the meaning to the numbers and saying, this is what the numbers mean based on what you're saying from the operations of the business. And I will be the first to say that is not my wheelhouse. I am not a financial expert. I am not an expert in laying out all the KPIs for every single industry under the sun. But there is a very real mental state where if you know the financials, but you don't know everything that makes the financials happen, it's going to be scary to say, I will advise you on how to help your business run, which is why there are more skills and there's more knowledge that has to be laid on top of the debits and credits and all the things that go along.
Absolutely, and I think there's a couple of hurdles that they got to get over. Number one, they got to be able to do that, right? The tech, like, because there's the compliance work that a bookkeeper, and our audience is mostly on the bookkeeping side, right? We definitely have listeners do both and all aspects of it. But if we talk about the compliance side, we got the compliance side down. We got all the data. It's all accurate, right? Accurate data. If we don't have accurate data, it's inaccurate. So it's all, everything upstream from that's garbage. So we gotta get good data in. That's compliance. Get it done, and then what do we do with that information? Now that's traditionally that's where it stops. It's like, okay, here's everything's right, and here's a couple of reports about it. Nobody understands it. But that piece of what you're talking about, the deadheads, the KPIs, understanding industry knowledge, putting all that together and helping them shift their behavior to make more money, that's a piece that they got to learn how to do too. And that's, some people already do that, know it, but that's a training area. And then there's the piece of, okay, how do we actually communicate to people that this is what we do? This is your world, right? We need to tell a story to people and get them to understand that by doing this, what we do is going to create this amazing future for them. And another piece, and I don't know where it fits exactly in this little compartmentalizing everything, but it's the pricing. They're not charging enough to do that special, what's it worth to have the KPI knowledge and the industry knowledge and to put it all in reports and to change the profitability of a company? Like, what's it worth for me as a provider to turn your business from making, 10% a year on your profit margin to 20 or 30%? What's that worth? Well, if you're charging hourly, number one, you're not going to ever get paid enough to do it. And so that's a big problem. How do you deal with that? Or what's your thoughts on the pricing piece?
Well, again, I will say straight up, that is outside my wheelhouse. I've been working with some folks over the last year who this is their expertise. It's a group called Summit Virtual CFO. They are a virtual CFO company that was acquired in 2022 by a top 100 U.S. firm called Anders CPAs and Associates, Anders CPAs and Advisors. So Anders acquired Summit and as their advisory side, and that's one of the things that they talk about all the time is the idea of, okay, here's how to package your services. Here's how to apply a system of what of what you do, bringing in the data, how to make that happen, and then how to turn around and deliver that to the client such that they will pay you $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, depending on what level of team you bring in with an advisory capacity. But even so, I mean, it doesn't even have to be an $80,000 or $100,000 annual contract like that. It can actually be something that's much more in line with what the bookkeeper already knows and operates with every day.
That's right. There's not these are
It's
we're
not a
talking about
one-size-fits-all.
extremes here, and kind of like a
It's a continuum.
A continuum, yes, like a spectrum, right? We got a
Mhm.
spectrum here, and that's also another one that I think blocks people is they think, oh, I've got to have the one that $80,000 contract, or my it's like, how will I ever get there? I guess I won't even try.
Right.
That was a great chat with Jeff Bartsch. Some great insights there. In part 2 of our conversation, he'll focus on a tactical approach to adding advisory services, which includes a simple strategy that will be a great benefit to your business. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.